wonderful to be with you. Honestly, it's a great honor for me to be able to be invited into this space. Thank you, Pastor Rusty, for inviting me. Just real quick background, I've been in ministry for about 30 years. I was at a church called Mission Viejo Christian Church in Southern California. From there, I moved over. Some Mission Viejo folks here? Really? Oh my gosh, God bless you. Yeah, we'll have an altar call for you a little bit later. And then I went to Saddleback Church, where I served with Pastor Rick Warren for a number of years, and then got a call from Overlake Christian Church, which is in the Redmond area, and I served as lead there for about 16 years. A year and a half ago, God actually called us out of that space, but to continue ministry, so I actually do personal coaching, consulting. I work with individuals, I work with churches, and I work with leadership teams, and it's been just an extension of a beautiful ministry of life transformation. So I'm really, really excited about this season that we're in. I have been married to my wife Jody for 25 years. She's an incredible woman, very patient, and so yeah, really excited about 25 years, and I can tell so many of you are as well. And then I've got 3 kiddos. They are, surfers from Southern California. My daughter, Alex, is 21 years old. She's actually a senior at Seattle University. She was on the track team there. My son, Caleb, is 19. He's at Western up in the Bellingham area. And then my youngest is Doozy. So we brought Doozy into our home 11 years ago. We adopted him from South Africa. His name when we met him was Mduduzi Shozi, which is a beautiful Zulu name. It actually means comforter. And so we love that. We wanted to keep his, connection to his roots, but we also wanted to give him a new middle name, which would be a little more maybe accessible to American ears. But that was a challenge, right? Because what name sounds good following You can't just call him Mduduzi Bob. Right? Like that just doesn't work. And so we, my wife, Jody, we kind of worked together, prayed together, read the baby books. We landed on the name Ezekiel, which means God is his strength. And so his name is Mduduzi Ezekiel Howerton. And that idea of strength from God and comfort, my son has actually brought both into our home. And it's been really just a beautiful, beautiful journey. And he is the only Mduduzi in his class. So that's pretty convenient. I like that. Many years ago, I wrote a book, and it was on the prophet Jonah, and the book was called Glorious Mess. And the reason is because people would come to me and say, Pastor, I need more Jonah. I got to have more Jonah. I have a fever, and there's only one cure, Jonah. Not really, right? That never happens because he's been written off largely. In fact, if you Google Jonah, you'll find children's videos and Jonah Hill, the actor. That's it. And no, the reason why I chose Jonah is the same reason why the title is called Glorious Mess. It's because nobody in the Bible is messier than Jonah. If you're familiar with the book, you know that he's a mess at the beginning. When he hears from God, he runs in the opposite direction. He dead ends his life in messiness. And then finally, he obeys God for like 20 minutes, and he's a mess again at the end of the book. And I was like, and yet God's glory shines throughout. And so I realized, that's so much more authentic to what this journey with the Lord actually looks like. So often in Christendom, what we do is we coach our testimonies to sound like this. Once I was blind, and now I see. Once I was this, bad, baddie bad, but now I'm this, good, goody good. But it's just rather inauthentic, isn't it? So much more true to form to say something like, once I was a mess 57 ways, and then I met Jesus, and now I'm a mess 34 ways. But God's glory shines throughout. And so anyway, I wrote that book, and my friend and Pastor Rick Warren, was kind enough to endorse it. He called it pure gold. So I'm happy to report the book has sold dozens of copies all across America, impacted tens of lives, right? Got some great reviews. My Aunt Kay loved it. My mom bought a box. It's still in her garage. So anyway, that's that. I want to talk today about hearing God. And so the question, if you see the title of the message is, would you like to hear God speak? And the answer, maybe not. And so we want to kind of delve into that We know that God communicates to us through his word, right? The scriptures. So we often refer to the Bible as God's word. So that's one of the conduits, the main conduit that he's communicating to us. And then in the scriptures, we also read about Jesus, who is described as the word. So Jesus is actually what God has to say. So we want to make sure that anything we do is built on this foundation of the word that is Jesus and the word that God has spoken in the scripture. What I want to do is kind of use that and go a little bit deeper in this kind of reflexive, proactive relationship we have with God. Do you want to hear God speak? And if you do, there are some things that we need to process together. The first, if you're filling in the blanks, is we need to believe that God speaks through life circumstances. We need to believe that God speaks. So that's the premise, that he is speaking, he's calling, he's guiding, he's nudging, he's prompting. So that's the premise. And then that he speaks through life circumstances. When I was in the 3rd grade, my dad took me and my buddy Avery on a little fishing excursion. We went to the edge of this river, and my dad's a great fisherman, me not so much. So he gets me all set up. You know, I've got the rod, and I've got the line and the hook, and he puts the bait on, hands me the pole. And so I go, and I'm just imagining that the moment the hook hits the water, the fish will strike, landing me my own television show. That doesn't happen. What happens is I go back to cast, and I go to throw the thing into the water, but the hook never clears my shoulder. It's caught on something. And so then I pull again, and it's still stuck. And the 3rd time I pull as hard as I can, nothing doing. I turn around to see what I had snagged, and I had snagged my buddy Avery. Turns out my first cast, I nabbed a 60-pounder. And the interesting thing is the hook actually went through the tip of his forefinger. So, yeah, right? So every time I'm pulling, he's pointing, like an old-time preacher. He didn't yell, I yelled, and my dad comes running with pliers and calm words and a Band-Aid, successfully avoiding litigation. But that ended our fishing trip, right? We all went home skunked. None of us had caught anything, but I had, at the age of 9, become a fisher of men. But right? Yeah, exactly. Now, it's a silly story. True, it's a true story, but silly story. But I wonder if it presents kind of this umbrella concept of what if God is actually speaking to us through our life circumstances, through the interesting and unusual and not very common circumstances like I just hooked my fishing buddy, or through the more common and the more daily and the more routine, like, I'm just standing in line at Starbucks moment, or I'm just heading to the office again moment, or this is another meal we're having together as a family moment. I wonder if we started to ask the question, God, what are you calling me to in this situation, if we wouldn't have some exciting and proactive answers of God inviting us into great spaces? You see, I know that many of us who are following Jesus, we might believe that God has this capital C call on our life, that we're to know God and enjoy him forever. And so there's this big picture call of God. But I wonder what might change if we realize that maybe there's a lowercase c, that God has a call on this month for you. God has a call on this week. He has a call on today. Maybe he has a call in this next hour on your life. See, I wonder if it might just change our whole framework. And I bring this up because as a pastor over 30 years, I can't tell you how many times somebody has said something like this. Well, Pastor, when this season of my life gets over, then I'll listen and respond to God. When stuff settles down at work, then I'll be ready to do what it is he's calling me to do. When I just get the kids in a place where all the plates are kind of spinning, or for some of you, when the kids finally move out of the house, or some others of you, when they move out of the house, for the 2nd and 3rd time, right? You just think like, there's a time when maybe in the future, the circumstances will no longer prevent me from listening and responding to God. But I'm here to tell you, friends, the circumstances aren't preventing you from hearing God. They're actually the medium through which God speaks. He speaks through our current life circumstances to call us into a place where we get to experience his glory and our personal best. So that's where the challenge is, to pay attention. The second thing we need to do is we need to believe that God guides his servants, that he is proactive, that he is present, that he is with us. And so I'm going to go ahead and start with a verse from Jonah, chapter 1, verse 1. I know that a few months ago, Pastor Rusty actually did a couple of messages out of Jonah. I think that's wonderful. That's fantastic. I'm just excited that now you get, some good content here. No, I'm just kidding. The idea is this. We're just going to use him as a beginning point. So let's look at verse 1. It says, "Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, 'Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and call out against it, for their evil has come up before me.'" So in this verse, we see that God is calling, he's leading, he's prompting Jonah to do something, go to Nineveh. He says that it's an evil city, but I see its greatness. I see its potential. So Jonah, I need you to go there. But we don't know anything about Jonah. There's no backstory to who this prophet is, except for one other place in Scripture, which is in 2 Kings 14. It says, "Spoken through his servant Jonah." That's all we know. That's all the backstory we get. That Jonah is God's servant. Now, what does that bring to your mind? See, I wonder if by servant in the Scripture, that's the designation that he has, we think, oh, Jonah must be on the edge of his seat waiting for God to call him into something. A servant is the one who just can't wait to hear what it is that his master calls him to and then enters into that space. Or maybe even if there's enough trust in the master, the servant thinks, I can't wait until I hear the master's call because it's something that I deeply want to do as well. And friends, that's absolutely true with Jesus. Those are the kinds of spaces he calls us into. And so that's what I want to encourage you. Be on the edge of your seat, right? Be listening because he guides his servants. And you might already be this person. And if not, I promise you, you know this person, right? These are the people in your life with the best stories. Stories like, it was like midnight, and I just felt God calling me to go to McDonald's and ask the guy behind the counter if he'd given up on his dreams. So I did. I go to McDonald's, I order a milkshake, I ask the guy behind the counter, hey, have you given up on your dreams? He starts to cry. I lead him to the Lord. I help him get off drugs. I help him get into college. He's now the Prime Minister of Luxembourg. And that story's fictitious, but you know what I mean. You've heard stories like that, and you wonder sometimes, like, God, could you call me into something that was fun, that's exciting, that's an adventure in your kingdom? And the premise is, he is. Now, I need God to kind of hit me over the head sometimes, or at least call me on the phone. And one experience I had several years ago, I was on staff at Saddleback Church, and we had this pastoral care phone. And it would be assigned to different pastors sort of on these weekly rotations. And the idea was anyone in the community could call the church and find and talk to a pastor live 24/7. It was just the accessibility kind of a thing. And so I get a call. It's my turn with the phone. I get a call at 3 a.m. Now, I just want to be honest. I'm not very pastoral at 3 a.m. I'm barely a Christian, until 6 a.m. and a cup of coffee. So I get a call at 3 a.m. and I discover through my sleepy end of the conversation, it's this woman, and she's telling me that her ex-husband is in a coma, and the doctors don't predict that he's going to live for very much longer, and he's never accepted Jesus. Could I come down to the hospital room and preach Jesus to him? Now, I did not feel like going to the hospital. I felt like praying with her on the phone and going back to sleep. But I sensed that God was in it, that he was nudging me, prompting me. He wanted me in the hospital. So I said, okay, I will. And I jumped in the car, went down there, walked in. It was exactly like she said. There, he's lying there in the middle of the room, and there's all of these wires and monitors and tubes and, beeping. And I just walk up to the edge of the bed, and I begin to preach Jesus to him. I talked to him about how he is made in love with a purpose, that God desires this relationship with him that lasts the whole course of his life and then all throughout eternity. I said, but it's sin that has come in and separated you from your loving creator. And that's why it's not about the good works that you do, I said. It's about the good work that Jesus has already done on the cross. And the whole time I'm talking to him, he's just lying there, totally comatose, completely unresponsive. It felt like youth ministry to me in that moment right there. And after a few minutes, I took his hand and I said, now listen, I'm going to pray. And if you'd like to receive Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior, I said, you can squeeze my hand or you can blink your eyes or just however you'd like to, you can respond. And instantly my hand was in a vice grip. And he was nodding his head like this and moaning a little, and there were tears coming down his cheeks. Friends, I have never been more certain of a humble response to the gospel than in that moment. And so I prayed with him to receive Christ. And when we were done praying, I said, you can be sure of two things. Number one, all of your sins are forgiven. There's no shame. There's no stain. You are cleansed in Jesus. And then I said, and the second thing is this, when your journey on this life is over, you'll be welcomed with open arms in heaven. Meanwhile, his ex-wife is just ecstatic. She's emotional, she's celebratory, she's so grateful. And so I shake her hand, I say, thank you so much for calling. Now I'm gonna go ahead and head home now. I said, but keep me posted on how things go. And so about a half hour later, I'm climbing into bed and the phone rings again, and it was this woman. And she called, she said, I just want to say thank you again for coming down to the hospital room. She said, I need you to know that my ex-husband just passed away into a joy-filled eternity. And when I hung up the phone, I got emotional. Because I was so close to missing it. I just wanted to pray with her on the phone and go back to sleep. And here's the thing, nobody would have known. Not even me. I never would have known what I said no to. And that's the truth. God rarely shows us a glimpse of what we say no to. So the challenge is that we would believe that he guides us and say yes to him again and again and again. And by the way, this is the relationship that Jesus describes as normal in his kingdom. In John chapter 10, he's talking about himself as the good shepherd. And he says this, he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. After he has gathered his own flock, he walks ahead of them, check this, and they follow him because they know his voice. It's normal. I am the good shepherd. I know my own sheep and they know me. And so that's what Jesus wants from us. He's our good shepherd. He goes ahead of us and he calls us to follow after him as we listen to his voice. So let me give you a couple of postures to embrace on hearing God. These are practices that help us to be in a position to hear God. The first is the word quiet. With such loud and noisy lives, we need to intentionally quiet things down. We've got to sort of turn off the radio, turn off the Spotify, turn off the podcast, just so that we can build quiet in to listen to God's voice. Number two is priority. Priority. We have to want to hear from the Lord. And by the way, let me give you an affirmation here. You're all here. You're watching online or you're present in this space, which means that you already have a priority. You want to hear what the word says. You want to hear what God has for your life. So you already are exhibiting this, but it's, kind of hit the gas pedal. Keep going with your priority, up the level of your desire to hear from God. Number three is proximity, and that means intimacy with Jesus. This is where we draw near to God and we recognize how very near he already is to us. And the fourth word is the word stillness. We build stillness into our life. We have to practice stillness. And this comes from 1 Kings 19, where we discover that it's not in the windstorm that God speaks. It's not in the earthquake that God speaks. It's not in the firestorm that God speaks, but it's in the still, small voice. And so we get stillness and we get quiet and we try to listen for his voice. But friends, let me tell you what the foundation is. The very first step, if you want to hear from God, the very first step we need to take is to decide in advance how you're going to respond. See, what we like to do is we like to say something like this: God, you go ahead and tell me what you want from me, and then I'll tell you if I think that's a good idea or not. Right? And so let me tell you a quote I found, and this is really powerful. It's "No, Lord" is a contradiction in terms. You can't say no and call him Lord. You can't call him Lord if you're going to tell him no. Far better to respond like Isaiah. Look at this verse from Isaiah 6:8. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" And I said, "Here am I, send me." You see that Isaiah's response is immediate and it's clear. It's almost like a preemptive obedience. He's like, whatever you want, God, I'm ready. Here I am. Send me. Now, notice what Isaiah did not say. He did not say, Lord, will this be convenient for me? Is there a training course? Will it come with health benefits? Can you guarantee my safety? What are the girls there like? Can I wear my rainbow sandals? What if there's no espresso? Do I bring a coffee maker? Will it be in Europe? Should I bring an adapter? He didn't say anything. He just said, yes, whatever you want, I believe is the very best course of action for my life, right? That preemptive obedience. So how about you? Are you the kind of person who is ready at the edge of your seat, ready to respond like Isaiah, or do you sort of hedge your bets with an excuse or two? See, I've heard a lot of excuses over 30 years. I've even used several. Here are the top 4 I just want to highlight. The first reason we give to opt out of God's call, I'm too young. I'm too young. I'll jump in and follow God's plan for my life when I'm older, when I've learned a few things, when I get out of my prolonged adolescent phase. But the Bible's really clear that God isn't concerned about how young or inexperienced we are, right? He's not so concerned about experiences we have not had yet or resources we may not have at our disposal yet. In fact, what's clear is that God calls children to phenomenal things every day. You might remember that David was a teenager when he took the battlefield against Goliath. Joan of Arc was also in her teens when she heard God's call and routed the English out of France. Thomas Jefferson was in elementary school when he penned the Declaration of Independence. That's not true. That's really not true. It would have been a great third point. It's just not true. I made that up. Just don't Google it. That was me. Okay, here's what it says in Jeremiah. It says, the word of the Lord came to me saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Ah, sovereign Lord, I said, I do not know how to speak. I am only a child. There it is. But the Lord said to me, do not say I am only a child. You must go to everyone I send you to and say, whatever I command you, do not be afraid of them, for I am with you and will rescue you, declares the Lord. Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, now I have put my words in your mouth. That's so important. Because the biblical truth is this, that God qualifies those he calls. The biblical truth is that God provides what it is that he requires from you. And so that's what he does with Jeremiah. He believes in Jeremiah. He calls to Jeremiah. Then he provides the very words that Jeremiah is to share. And he says, don't let anyone look down on you. And I bring this up because some of you feel young. You feel inexperienced. You feel like, what could I offer? And friends, I just want you to know, we're not to let anyone look down on us because we're young. But we're ready to set an example in our faithfulness to God, right? Respond like Isaiah. The next excuse is just on the opposite. Not I'm too young, I'm too old, right? It's the other end of the spectrum. I used to be a weapon in God's arsenal, but I've put in my time, and now I'm uncool. I'm confused by technology. I find skinny jeans ridiculous, right? Besides, what could I do? And when I hear this response, I basically go a little nuts because, friends, the kindest, most grace-filled, most generous, the surrogate mothers and fathers and grandmothers and grandfathers. And in fact, I don't even call them golden years. I call them wisdom years. Because the aggregate of life wisdom, the aggregate of experience, it's just phenomenal to pass on to the next generation. There was a dear saint in my last church at Overlake Christian Church. His name's Mel. And Mel was like a spiritual father to me. Every day before I stepped into the pulpit, he would lay hands on me and he would pray blessing and wisdom over me, guidance. He would pray over my family. He'd pray blessing over the church. It just was this beautiful experience. And I just want to tell you, I never ever asked, I never knew how old Mel was, but the movie Jurassic Park brought back memories for him, okay? He owed Moses money, okay? He remembers when rainbows only came in black and white, all right? But the point is that there is no expiration date in the kingdom of God. Many of you are familiar with the story of Daniel in the lion's den. And you know that the reason why the king's other advisors conspired against him and sort of facilitated that horrible thing where he ended up breaking the law because he was worshiping God and he got thrown in the lion's den. They did that because he was powerful, because he was righteous, because he was a threat to their godless pursuits. What we don't really realize very often is that Daniel was in his 80s when that experience happened. Could you imagine what the kingdom of God would look like? What the transformation of the society would look like if everyone in their 60s, 70s, 80s who had this long obedience in the same direction, just stood powerfully in their righteousness. It was that kind of a presence in the world. It would be transformative. So friends, if you're in that, I just want to say, please respond like Isaiah. You have too much to offer. The next excuse kind of cuts across all socioeconomic and demographic lines. It's just the excuse, I'm too busy. I'm too busy. We live lives that are filled and overfilled. We're always rushing. There's never enough time. We have, all of us, at some point or another, bowed the knee to this idol of busy. So we need to sort of recalibrate. We need to recognize that God has called us to exactly what we can accomplish in the 24 hours that he's given us. And if we don't have time, it means we're doing too many things that God has not called us to. And the next excuse is this: I'm too comfortable. I'm too comfortable. I like my current circumstances. I'm enjoying myself. Could you please pass the cheese dip? And actually, we never really talk like this, right? We never talk about, oh, I'm too comfortable. That's why I'm not responding to God's call. But isn't this the truth? That comfort is actually at the foundation of all excuses that we would use? That really is a thing. And our society is built on it. American society is built on comfort. It's built on convenience. Like, that's what we know. And so that's where we are most comfortable, to overuse a word, and we don't want to step outside of that zone. Why? Because it's uncomfortable. And here's this preacher boy coming in and saying, yeah, but you need to listen to God's call as it goes outside of the comfort zone, because that's where life is. That's where the miracles are. That's where this glorious dependence upon him is. That's where the abundance that Jesus is inviting us into. It's all outside of that comfort zone. And maybe you're almost convinced, but you push back a little bit. You're like, you know what, preacher boy, this all sounds good. But I'm afraid that if I really say yes to God's call for my life, it might disrupt the plans I've already set. And to that, I would say, absolutely, he will. God has absolute free reign to totally disrupt the plans that we set for our life. So let me be really, really vulnerable with you. I had a great life plan in Southern California. I was gonna grow old, do ministry, surf every week. I was gonna let my skin be tanned and leathery. I was gonna whiten my teeth like everyone else in Orange County, California. And then God called me to Seattle. And you guys know, living under this soggy blanket for the last 17 years, right? My skin has become white like an Irish newborn baby. The only thing tan about me, because of all the Starbucks I drink, are my teeth. Okay? And you guys know, because you live here, that it doesn't pour rain. That's like it's just a myth that America tells. It never just dumps rain. It just spits all the time, right? It's like living under the lettuce mister at the grocery store, right? So yeah, God will disrupt your plans. That's the whole point. It's like, yeah, he will. But there's something beautiful about that. He has a glorious purpose for each and every one of us. And so you look at the scripture, you look at Isaiah, you look at Jeremiah, you look at all of these heroes of our faith who have had their lives disrupted by God's beautiful call, but none perhaps more than Mary, the mother of Jesus, right? To picture her, you have to picture like a mid-teenager. This young girl, you picture maybe a daughter or maybe a niece or maybe a little sister. A good girl, she's quality, no discernible halo, but she's so solid. And then an angel shows up and announces she's to be pregnant. Now, unplanned pregnancy is always a shocker. And in this reality, it was actually biologically impossible, so she's definitely shocked. And she knew that the harshest description of Old Testament law could mean that she'd be taken to the city gates and killed for being pregnant outside of wedlock. So you have to understand that this news came with significant weight. And I bring this up because I want to encourage you, when you read the pages of Scripture and you read about the heroes of our faith, please don't make them like every twist and turn in the road is just a zippity-doo-dah kind of a day. Don't reduce them to characters in an animated musical. That does a disservice. See, the reason why they're heroes of our faith is because not knowing what the road ahead looks like, with their hearts pounding or even breaking, they just said to Jesus, yes. Yeah, what you want, that's what I want. And so Mary, she responds like that. She says, I'm the Lord's servant. And she enters into this road. And I can imagine that when she held her baby against the cold air of a stable night, she must have looked up to the heavens and said, God, thank you for this incredible disruption. I can imagine that when she was at that wedding in Cana with Jesus and the disciples a few years later, and she watched her son transform water into wine, she must have just been saying, God, thank you for this incredible disruption. I can imagine when she stood at the foot of the cross and she watched her baby boy, the beard ripped from his face, the lashes on his back, with the nails and this gash and the scorn, the crown of thorns. Just saying, God, why this horrible disruption? And then I can imagine a couple of days later, when she sees her resurrected son, and all of God's plan of salvation now comes into fruition. Even in her own mind, she sees, just saying, God, thank you for this glorious, glorious, glorious disruption. You see, not knowing the twists and turns in the road, not knowing the highs and lows that God's call was going to mean on her, not understanding what even the next day or year might look like for her, she didn't have to see the whole game plan. She simply responded like a servant responds. This is why Mary is a hero of faith, because of how she responds to the angel. She says, I am the Lord's servant, Mary answered. May it be to me as you have said. In other words, she knew who she was. She was God's servant, sitting on the edge of her seat, ready to do whatever it was that God was calling her to. And this brings us to the last truth, and it's simply this, that submitting to God's call today prepares us to hear God's voice tomorrow. This is how we build listening muscles. Surrendering to God's call today prepares us to hear God's voice tomorrow. And the example we have in this is Jesus. In the garden, when he prays, he says, not my will, but yours. It's a beautiful picture of that submission. But when we practice that, it allows us to hear him more and more readily. So I just want to close our time together by challenging each and every one of us to do some listening. What is it that God's calling you to? Is he calling you to forgive an old wound? Is he calling you to come alongside a colleague? Is he calling you toward a move of generosity? Or maybe you want to bring somebody, evangelistically. You want to care for somebody and communicate God's heart for them. Or maybe if you're here and you have never said yes to a relationship of love with Jesus, that's where it all starts. He is calling you into that relationship today. So why don't you bow your heads right now and close your eyes. Let's pray together as we close. Jesus, I want to say thank you for the way that you love us, the way that you care for us, the way that you have created us for a purpose, the way that you have pursued us in grace, the way that on the cross you have provided everything we need for forgiveness, for cleansing, and for righteousness and for eternity. And so Jesus, what we want to do, all of us right now, is we want to say thank you for that. We receive that gift today. We want to say thank you that you are a God who is near. You are not distant. We've talked before today about how you are present with us, that you never leave us and you never forsake us. And so because we believe all of these things, we also believe that you are proactively speaking to us, prompting us, nudging us, guiding us, leading us along the course of our life. So would you unstop our ears, Lord Jesus? Would you allow us to really lean in and listen and respond, like Isaiah, like Jeremiah, like Jesus, like Mary? We want to be in that company. And we pray all of these things, knowing that you hear our prayers. In the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, amen. Amen. Well, LifePoint, it's been wonderful to be with you. Thank you all. Have a great time at your baptisms today, and God bless.